I always knew something about me did not quite fit the picture of our family. My name was Ethan Miller, and in every family photo on the wall, I felt like the frame did not belong to me. My parents, Daniel and Claire, had a way of smiling for the camera that never reached their eyes when they looked at me. My older brother Jason had my father's square jaw and my mother's green eyes. My sister Lily had her curls and that same laugh that could fill a room. And me, I was the quiet one in the corner, the shadow in someone else's home. When I was younger, I would ask Mom why my hair was darker than Jason's, or why people always said I looked different. She would pat my head and tell me I was special, that families came in all kinds of colors. I used to believe that, until I learned that special sometimes meant not really one of us. Our house sat on the edge of a small New Hampshire town. 2-story farmhouse with white peeling paint and a yard that sloped into the woods. From the outside, we looked like a normal family. But behind those weathered walls, I was constantly reminded of my place. Jason got the new baseball glove, Lily got ballet lessons, and I got hand-me-downs. It was not the gifts that hurt. It was the way Dad would look at Jason and say, "That's my boy," with pride heavy in his voice, while I got silence. At night, I used to sit by my bedroom window and stare at the stars, imagining someone out there who might have wanted me. I did not know why those thoughts came so easily, or why I could never shake the feeling that I was temporary. Once I overheard my parents arguing downstairs. It was late, the kind of hour when the house goes still except for the sound of the refrigerator humming. I crept halfway down the stairs, small enough to hide in the darkness. Claire's voice cracked like glass. "He deserves to know, Daniel." Dad's reply was sharp, tired. "No, we agreed. He's ours now, and that's the end of it." The words, "he's ours now," hit me like ice water. I did not understand what they meant, but the tone, the finality, made my stomach twist. I wanted to run down the stairs, to ask them what they were talking about. But instead, I crept back to my room, pretending I never heard a thing. After that night, I started noticing the gaps in our story. The photo albums had pictures of Jason as a baby, Lily in her crib, but none of me until I was almost 3. Whenever I asked where my baby pictures were, Mom would say something vague like, "We lost a box during the move. But we only ever moved once, and that was before Lily was born." By the time I turned 16, I stopped asking questions. I learned to exist quietly, get good grades, keep to myself, and never expect too much. I worked part-time at a gas station after school, saving every dollar for college. I wanted to get out of that house, out of that suffocating silence. Still, no matter how much I tried to ignore it, the distance between us grew. Dad and I rarely spoke unless it was about chores. He treated me like an employee rather than a son. One night at dinner, Jason joked, maybe Ethan was adopted or something. He laughed. Mom's fork froze midair. Dad glared at him, then at me. "That's not funny," he said, but his eyes lingered on me too long, and something unspoken flickered there. Guilt, maybe. That night, I looked in the mirror and saw every reason they might have kept something from me. My skin was slightly darker than theirs, my jaw sharper, my eyes a different shade. Maybe it was all coincidence, but it gnawed at me. Every reflection became a question mark. Then came the week before my 18th birthday. My life was quiet, predictable. I had saved nearly $2,000, planning to leave for community college that fall. I had no illusions of anyone celebrating my birthday. It had never been a big deal in the Miller household. But that year, things felt different. There was a strange tension in the air, like everyone was waiting for something. One afternoon, I got home from school early. I heard my parents talking in the kitchen. Mom's voice was hushed, but I caught fragments. "He deserves to know the truth, Daniel," she said again. Dad snapped, "And destroy everything we've built? No, he's 18 soon. Once he's out of here, it won't matter." I froze in the hallway, my backpack sliding off my shoulder. My heart thudded so loud it drowned out the rest of their argument. "Once he's out of here." The words cut deeper than any truth could. I backed away, out the front door, into the cold air. For the next few days, I avoided them. I went to work, came home, and locked myself in my room. But every time I saw them at the dinner table, pretending everything was fine, the anger simmered hotter. I wanted answers, but I was terrified of what they might be. The night before my birthday, I found Mom sitting in the living room, her hands folded tight around a mug of tea. The light from the lamp made her face look older, tired. "Mom," I said quietly, standing by the doorway. "What's going on?" "What am I not supposed to know?" She looked up, startled, as if she had been caught doing something wrong. "Ethan, please don't start this tonight." I stepped closer. "Start what? Pretending? Because I've been doing that my whole life." Tears welled in her eyes. "You wouldn't understand. Try me," I said. My voice cracked, not from anger, but from years of being invisible. She set the mug down, her hands trembling. "It's not my place to tell you." "It never was. Then whose place is it?" She didn't answer. Instead, she whispered, "You'll know tomorrow." Her words felt like a curse and a promise. Tomorrow. The truth I'd been chasing my whole life was waiting for me in the next sunrise. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing every creak of the house as if it were alive and whispering secrets. My mind replayed every odd look, every incomplete story, every time my father called me boy instead of son. When dawn broke, I sat by the window again, the same window where I used to dream about someone out there who might have wanted me. Only now, I wasn't sure if I wanted to know who that someone was. Because what if the truth didn't just explain my life? What if it changed it forever? My 18th birthday started like any other day, except for the strange silence that hung in the air. No one said, "Happy birthday," no breakfast waiting on the table, no half-hearted smile from Mom. Just that quiet tension again, the kind that seeps into the walls and makes the air heavy. I thought about skipping the day altogether, disappearing into the woods behind our house like I used to as a kid. But something kept me there. Maybe it was what Mom said the night before. "You'll know tomorrow." Those words had haunted my sleep, and I needed to know. Around noon, I came back from work at the gas station to find a small white envelope sitting on the kitchen table. My name was written in blue ink, neat and careful. Underneath it, a single line. "Deliver this to him." "Mom?" I called out. No answer. The house was too still. I looked around and saw her standing outside in the yard, her arms wrapped around herself. She looked pale, like she hadn't slept either. I stepped outside holding the envelope. "Is this for me?" She turned, her lips trembling. "It's from your father," I frowned. "He's at work." She shook her head slowly. "Not that father, Ethan. Your real one." The words punched the breath out of me. What are you talking about?" She nodded toward the envelope. "Open it!" My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside was a folded letter and a small photograph, an old one, slightly faded. It showed a man in his 30s with dark hair standing beside a military jeep, smiling in uniform. His name was written on the back, Captain Adam Brooks. The letter smelled faintly of old paper and dust, the kind that carries history in its folds. I began to read. "Ethan, if you're reading this, it means the truth can no longer be hidden. My name is Adam Brooks. I am your father. You were born in Germany while I was stationed overseas. Your mother, Claire, was my nurse. We loved each other deeply, but the circumstances of our lives pulled us apart before I ever got to hold you. She made a choice to protect you, one I never agreed with, but one I came to understand. I've tried for years to reach her, to see you, but she refused every letter. Until now, I want you to know you were never abandoned. You were loved, always." I stared at the page, my mind spinning. My heart raced so fast it drowned out every other sound. This can't be real," I said, but my voice was barely a whisper. Mom's eyes filled with tears. "It is. Why?" "Why didn't you tell me?" She took a step closer, but I stepped back. "Because he wasn't supposed to come back. He was declared missing after the war. Daniel and we wanted a family. I thought it was the right thing to do." "The right thing?" I laughed bitterly. "To lie to me my whole life?" Tears rolled down her cheeks. "You were a baby. I thought you'd never know. I thought if we loved you enough." "But you didn't," I snapped. "You tolerated me." Her lips parted, but she didn't argue. She just stood there, broken. I turned the letter over and saw a small note written in different handwriting. This one was fresh, ink darker and smoother. "Ethan, come to this address. You deserve to know everything. It was signed by someone named James Rowan, and beneath his name was an address in Boston. I looked up at Mom. Who's James Rowan? She wiped her tears. Your father's lawyer. That was it. The moment my life split into before and after. I went upstairs, packed a small bag, and took the bus to Boston that afternoon. I didn't leave a note. Didn't say goodbye. There was nothing left to say. The city hit me like a storm. Cars honking, people shouting, the metallic hum of trains in the distance. I'd never been there before. My whole world had been that small New Hampshire town, and now I was standing in front of a tall glass building with the name Rowan and Associates etched in gold. Inside, everything smelled like leather and paper. The receptionist looked up, her tone softening when I told her my name. One moment, Mr. Miller. Excuse me, Mr. Brooks. That name, Brooks, sent a chill down my spine. A few minutes later, a tall man in his 50s stepped out of an office. His suit was dark gray, his hair silver, and his expression unreadable. Ethan, he said warmly. You look just like him. I swallowed hard. Like who? Your father. He led me into a large room lined with wooden shelves. Sunlight poured through the blinds, casting stripes across a massive oak desk. On it sat a single folder, thick with documents. James gestured for me to sit. Adam left this for you. He wanted me to hold on to it until your 18th birthday. I sat down, my hands trembling. He's gone? James nodded. He passed away last year, but not before making sure you'd get what was rightfully yours. He slid the folder toward me. Inside was another letter, and behind it, legal documents with my name on them. The more I read, the harder it became to breathe. Adam Brooks had been a decorated veteran turned entrepreneur. After leaving the Army, he founded Brooks Innovations, a small tech company that grew into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. He never married again. He never had other children. His entire estate, his home, his accounts, and full ownership of his company had been left to me. Why me? I asked, barely above a whisper. James smiled faintly. Because he never stopped looking for you. He said you were the one thing in his life that kept him going through the worst days. I sat there numb, staring at the legal papers that declared me heir to a man I'd never met. I thought of my father, Daniel, sitting in his office pretending the world was fine. I thought of my mother wringing her hands by the window, and I thought of every time they made me feel like a stranger in my own house. For the first time in my life, I realized something. Maybe I wasn't meant to fit into their story. Maybe I was supposed to start my own. James handed me one more envelope, smaller, older, sealed with red wax. He left this one for last, he said. I held it carefully, afraid to open it. On the front, written in the same handwriting as before, were the words, "For when you're ready to come home." I didn't know what home meant anymore, but I had a feeling I was about to find out. Boston's air smelled different that morning, like rain and ambition. I'd slept in a cheap motel, the kind where the wallpaper peeled and the city's noise bled through thin walls. But my mind wasn't on comfort. It was on the letter I hadn't opened yet, the one sealed with red wax, waiting like a heartbeat in my backpack. When I reached Rowan and Associates again, the receptionist gave me a sympathetic nod and led me straight to Mr. Rowan's office. This time, 2 other people were there. A woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a man in his 60s wearing an expensive watch. They looked at me the way people look at something unexpected, like a ghost walking into a room. "Ethan," James began gently. "This is Margaret and Richard Brooks, your aunt and uncle." I froze. My family. The word felt foreign. Margaret was the first to speak. "He has your eyes," she said softly, though her tone was wrapped in disbelief. "Adam talked about you for years. We thought it was just his way of coping." "Coping with what?" I asked. "Losing you," Richard replied, his voice edged with regret. "Your mother took you and vanished. Adam hired investigators, called embassies, nothing. After a while, we thought he'd let go, but he never did." James cleared his throat, pulling a thick envelope from his briefcase. Before his passing, Adam made one final amendment to his will. And per his instructions, all parties are to be present for its reading today. My chest tightened. I took a seat, my palms slick with sweat, as James opened the document. His voice carried through the quiet room like thunder in slow motion. I, Adam Brooks, being of sound mind, do hereby declare this my final will and testament. To my siblings, Margaret and Richard Brooks, I leave a trust of $1 million each in gratitude for their continued presence in my life. To my company board, I leave a portion of my shares as defined in the attached annex. And to my son, Ethan Brooks, I leave the remaining estate, including all assets, properties, investments, and my controlling stake in Brooks Innovations. There was a pause so heavy it seemed to swallow the air. Margaret blinked. Richard leaned back, his expression unreadable. I stared at James, not fully processing what he'd just said. Did you say,
son?
James nodded slowly. You are the sole heir, Ethan. Adam's estate is valued at approximately $93 million. 93 million. The number echoed in my head like a scream. My throat tightened and I could barely speak. That has to be a mistake. It's not, Richard said quietly, his tone shifting from disbelief to something colder. You have his jawline. His stubbornness too, I'd bet. Margaret folded her arms.
So that's it?
We spent decades keeping his company alive while he hands it all to a boy who didn't even know he existed. Her words hit hard, sharper than I expected. James intervened quickly. This was Adam's decision. He was clear about his reasons. I swallowed hard. Reasons? James looked at me. He said you would understand in time. He left you the means to choose what kind of man you want to become. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel rich. I felt lost. My entire life had been built on lies, and now I was supposed to carry a legacy that didn't even feel like mine. Richard stood and offered a hand. For what it's worth, kid, Adam would have been proud. Don't let the money change you. I shook his hand, but Margaret didn't move. Her eyes followed me as I walked out, a storm of judgment and envy behind them. When I stepped outside, Boston's skyline shimmered under the afternoon sun. I found a quiet bench by the harbor and opened the smaller red-sealed envelope. Inside was a handwritten note on aged stationery. Adam's handwriting was steady, deliberate. Ethan, if this reaches you, it means I am gone, but my faith in you lives on. You will face two kinds of people now, those who see your name and those who see your heart. Trust the latter. The fortune you inherit is not your reward, it is your test. Use it to build something that outlasts us both. And if you ever doubt who you are, look in the mirror and remember this. You are my greatest creation. For a long time, I sat there staring at those words. You are my greatest creation. No one had ever said anything like that to me. As the sun dipped lower, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. Mr. Brooks, this is Victor from Brooks Innovations. Your presence is requested tomorrow morning at the main office for a formal introduction to the board. My breath caught. Tomorrow. Everything was happening too fast. That night, sleep didn't come easily. I kept hearing Daniel's voice, the man who raised me but never called me son. I wondered what he'd say if he knew. Would he be angry? Scared? Maybe he'd finally see what I was worth. The next morning, I stood in front of the Brooks Innovations headquarters, a tall, mirrored building that reflected the city like a dream. The lobby buzzed with energy, polished marble floors gleaming beneath my feet. A woman at the desk greeted me warmly. Mr. Brooks, the board is expecting you. She led me into a conference room with a long glass table and a dozen suited executives. Their conversations hushed as I entered. One man, older with silver hair and sharp features, stood up. Welcome, Ethan. I'm Victor Hammond, acting CEO. Your father and I built this company from the ground up. You've got big shoes to fill. His handshake was firm, but there was something in his eyes, something I couldn't quite read. I didn't come here to take over, I said carefully. I just want to understand what he built. Victor smiled faintly. That's what Adam said on his first day too. They showed me around. The labs, the offices, the innovation wings where prototypes were being tested. Every corridor carried echoes of my father's name. Every employee spoke about him with respect. By the time I left, I was overwhelmed. $93 million. A company, a legacy, a name I barely understood. That evening, as I walked past the harbor again, I saw a man in a dark coat standing near the railing. He watched me for a moment before speaking. "Ethan Brooks?" I hesitated. "Yes," he smiled faintly. "Your father saved my life once. He said if I ever found you, I should give you this." He handed me a small metal box, no bigger than a wallet. My pulse quickened as I took it. "What's inside?" I asked. He shrugged. "He said you'd know when the time was right." And then he was gone, just like that, disappearing into the crowd before I could ask another question. I turned the box over in my hands. It was old, heavy, engraved with the same crest that appeared on the company letterhead, Brooks Innovations. I didn't know what it contained, but one thing was certain. Whatever secret my father had left behind, it wasn't just about money. The metal box sat on my motel table that night, glinting faintly under the dim yellow light. I hadn't eaten, hadn't showered. I just stared at it. For hours. The engraved crest, the tiny lock mechanism, the weight of it. Everything about it screamed intention. My father had meant for me to find this. But why? I finally gave in, grabbed the pocket knife I'd carried since college, and wedged it beneath the latch. With a soft click, it opened. Inside was a small folded letter, another envelope, and a silver USB drive. My pulse spiked. The letter was handwritten, the same careful style as before. "Ethan, if you are reading this, then you have stepped into a world far bigger than you realize. The fortune I left you was not just money, it was responsibility. There are files on this drive that will explain everything, but be cautious who you trust. There are people who would rather see Brooks Innovations burn than see you take control." It wasn't what I expected. Not at all. Beneath the note was a business card, embossed, gold-trimmed, for a company I had never heard of. Vanguard Equity Holdings. On the back, scrawled in ink, were 5 words that chilled me. "They are not who they seem." I turned the card over again and again. Who were they, and what did they want from my father's company? I slipped the USB into my laptop. The drive whirred, and a folder appeared. Project Echelon. Inside were spreadsheets, encrypted documents, and a single video file. My finger hovered over it for a moment before double-clicking. The screen filled with my father's face. Older, thinner, his hair streaked with gray, but unmistakably him. "If you're watching this, Ethan," he began, his voice steady but tired, "then my time has run out. I created Brooks Innovations to build, not destroy. But some of the people I trusted, they saw power, not purpose. You need to know the truth about Victor Hammond." I leaned forward. "He's been selling company patents to Vanguard for years, offshore accounts, fake subsidiaries. I confronted him once, and the next day my brakes failed. I barely survived. That's when I knew I was running out of time." My stomach dropped. "I hid evidence inside the company servers, encrypted with your birth date. Only you can unlock it. Use it wisely. And Ethan," he paused, his eyes softening, "do not let greed guide you. Build something better than I did. End what I couldn't." The video ended abruptly, leaving me frozen in silence. My father's words replayed over and over in my head. Only you can unlock it. By midnight, I was pacing. My entire world had turned upside down twice in 2 days. I was no longer just an heir. I was the key to exposing a corporate conspiracy. Sleep never came. By morning, I was back at Brooks Innovations. The receptionist blinked in surprise when I walked in without an appointment. "Is Victor in?" She hesitated. "He's in a meeting." "Tell him it's Ethan Brooks," I said, my tone firm. Within minutes, I was standing across from Victor in his corner office, a glass box overlooking the city. He smiled thinly. "Ethan, this is a surprise. You settling into your new reality?" I set the metal box on his desk. "You tell me. How long have you been stealing from this company?" The smile faltered. "Just for a moment." Then he leaned back, chuckling. "I see you found Adam's paranoia files. They're not paranoia if they're true," I shot back. "He left everything to me for a reason." Victor's tone hardened. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. Brooks Innovations isn't a toy for sentimental heirs. Your father understood that until the end. I took a step closer. He also understood integrity. Something you clearly don't. He stood up, his voice dropping low. Walk away, Ethan. Take your money, disappear, live your life. You don't want to be part of this. I already am, I said. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. His gaze shifted to the box, the one he hadn't noticed before. That should have been destroyed. So it's true, I said. Everything he said. Victor sighed and sat down again, his expression calm but cold. You're your father's son, that's clear. But understand this. Adam made enemies far more dangerous than me. Vanguard owns half the board now. You can't win. I left before I said something I'd regret. Outside, I called Mr. Rowan. I need help, I said. We met that evening at his office again. When I told him about the USB and the video, he didn't look shocked. If anything, he looked resigned. I suspected as much, he said quietly. Your father came to me about a month before his death. He said if anything happened, the truth would surface through you. Then help me, I said. If there's evidence on the servers, we can prove everything. He nodded. But you'll need access to the archives. And only Victor and 2 senior IT heads have clearance. Then I'll find another way, I muttered. For the next few days, I stayed under the radar. I rented a temporary apartment downtown and spent hours digging through Brooks Innovation's online databases. Everything was locked behind layers of encryption. My father had made sure only I could break through. Finally, on the 4th night, something clicked. Using my birth date, 9/1/1993, I cracked an archive folder buried deep in the network. Inside was a single PDF labeled Equity Agreements, Vanguard. The document was damning. Signatures, bank transfers, fake shell companies. Millions siphoned quietly from the firm. But before I could even screenshot the files, my laptop screen went black. Then a message appeared in red text. We warned you. Stop digging. The cursor blinked, waiting for a response. My blood ran cold. Whoever Vanguard was, they were watching me in real time. I slammed the laptop shut and looked out the window. Across the street, a black SUV was parked with tinted windows. It was late. Too late. I packed the metal box, the USB, and my father's letters into my bag and slipped out the back alley, blending into the neon-lit streets. My heart pounded with every step. Whatever this was, it was bigger than inheritance now. It was survival. As rain began to fall, I ducked into a diner and called Mr. Rowan. He didn't pick up. I tried again. Nothing. Finally, I got a text. Ethan, do not come to my office. It's not safe. They know. My grip tightened on the phone. For the first time, I understood what my father had meant. This wasn't about money or legacy. It was about finishing a war he had started. One that could cost me everything. And somewhere in the shadows of Boston, someone was already moving their next piece on the board. The storm outside had calmed by dawn, but the one inside me was only beginning. I had spent the night in that booth, untouched coffee gone cold, staring out through fogged glass as the city woke up. The diner's flickering neon sign hummed above me. Open 24 hours. Like some cruel reminder that my fight wasn't going to close anytime soon. When I finally stepped back into the street, the air smelled of wet asphalt and diesel. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Mr. Rowan. Meet me at the marina. Come alone, it was risky. Too clean. Too sudden. But I went anyway. By the time I reached the docks, the morning sun had begun to burn away the fog. Mr. Rowan stood near a small yacht, his overcoat fluttering in the wind. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked uneasy. Ethan, he said, his tone low. They've frozen the estate accounts. Vanguard's already moving to seize Brooks Innovations. Victor signed emergency documents last night, transferring controlling interest. My stomach twisted. So that's it? My father's company gone? He shook his head. Not yet, but they're pushing fast. If you have anything that can prove fraud, now is the time. I hesitated, then pulled the USB from my pocket. This drive holds everything. My father's confession. The shell transfers. It's all here. Rowan's expression changed. Relief mixed with fear. Then we have one chance. We take this public. Press, regulators, board members. Once it's out, they can't bury it. Won't they come after us? I asked. They will, he admitted. "But if you want to honor Adam Brooks, this is how." We boarded his yacht, the hum of the engines barely audible beneath the morning breeze. He opened his laptop and began uploading the files through an encrypted server. And that's when I saw the reflection behind him. A man. Dressed in black. "Moving fast! Rowan!" I shouted, but it was too late. The man lunged, sending the laptop crashing to the floor. Rowan staggered back as the intruder drew a pistol, the barrel glinting in the morning light. I froze. The man's voice was calm, almost polite. "Mr. Brooks, I'll be taking that drive." "You'll have to kill me first," I said, gripping the metal railing behind me. He smirked. "That can be arranged." But before he could fire, Rowan swung a heavy wrench, hitting him square in the arm. The gun went off, deafening, shattering a window. Rowan shouted, "Go! Get it to the press!" I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the USB and bolted down the pier. Behind me, another shot echoed, followed by the sound of someone hitting the water. I ran until my lungs burned, the sounds of the harbor fading behind me. By noon, I was in a crowded coffee shop downtown, hiding in plain sight. I plugged the USB into a public terminal, hands trembling as I sent the files to every news outlet, government server, and whistleblower site I could find. When the upload bar hit 100%, I sat back and exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. That evening, it hit the news. Brooks Innovations under investigation. CEO linked to fraud and attempted homicide. Every major outlet picked it up. The board issued a statement distancing themselves from Victor Hammond. Vanguard's stock plummeted 40% overnight. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. The phone calls started. Reporters, investors, even former employees of my father's company. Some called me brave, others called me reckless, but none of that mattered, because I finally understood what my father had meant by responsibility. A week later, I returned to the Brooks estate. The house felt smaller somehow, emptier. The portraits on the wall, my supposed family, but no longer intimidated me. I stood before my father's old study and whispered, "It's done." The next morning, I was summoned to a board meeting. A dozen men in suits sat around a long table, their eyes wary but respectful. One of them, an older man with silver hair, stood and said, "Mr. Brooks, as of today, the board has unanimously voted to reinstate your family's rightful control. The company is yours." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Victor Hammond was later arrested, charged with embezzlement and conspiracy. Vanguard's executives vanished into legal chaos. The empire my father built had nearly collapsed. But now, it was mine to rebuild. Standing in that boardroom, I realized something else. Wealth wasn't the real inheritance. Truth was, weeks passed. I didn't buy a mansion or a sports car. I didn't disappear to an island. Instead, I reopened my father's old innovation wing, the one dedicated to scholarships and small business startups. The same vision he once had before corruption poisoned it. The first person I hired was a woman named Claire, one of the whistleblowers Victor had fired years ago. "You sure you trust me with this much responsibility?" she asked, smiling faintly. I nodded. My father believed in second chances. I think it's time I start doing the same. At night, when the office lights dimmed, I'd sit by the window overlooking the city. I'd think about that scared 18-year-old kid who was told he didn't belong, the adopted one, and wonder if he'd even recognize me now. Sometimes I'd open my father's last letter again. The paper was worn, but the ink still bold. Blood doesn't make a family, Ethan. Character does. The world will tell you who you are, but only you can prove them wrong. Those words carried me through everything that came after. The lawsuits, the interviews, the endless nights rebuilding a legacy from ashes. Months later, a new headline appeared. Adopted son of Adam Brooks rebuilds 93 Mappler's empire into non-profit foundation. The photo beneath it showed me smiling, not the forced grin I'd worn for years, but a real one, the kind that comes when you finally stop fighting who you are. I wasn't just my father's heir. I was proof that rejection doesn't define you. Purpose does. And somewhere, I hoped my father was finally at peace, watching his once-lost son turn a story of betrayal into one of redemption.